So typically with kids, if we understand their dosha type, and this is what I do all the time, even with my own kids, it gives me so much more understanding of why they're behaving in certain ways.
Kids who are hyperactive, they cannot sit still and lack of focus, what do you think is their body type?
Typically in these cases, there's usually a
If kids do yoga, their all doshas get balanced. Is it true?
if there's an issue with the kid, let's also look at the environment and the parents and what kind of, what are we teaching them in an unspoken way?
There are two kids coming to me and they live in same home, siblings. Parents are giving them same environment. Then why it is that one kid lacks so much focus and other is very attentive? One common thing I'm hearing from a lot of parents is that their kids cannot sit still. The lack of focus, attention. Constantly they want to do one thing or the other, and we have fancy terms, ADHD. Do you see that as a common problem?
Yeah, so good question. I think, I work a lot with moms and they bring their kids and we work with families. I think one important thing when we're looking at kids' health, right? Kids generally are born fairly balanced, fairly healthy. Of course, there are issues, but generally kids are pretty malleable. But we're seeing in modern day, we're seeing a lot more issues with focus, whatever labels, ADHD or, sensitivity or things like that, right? We have to first look also at the parents. This is one thing that, we'll see a lot of the anxious moms are trying to do everything right, but they're running on fast schedules. They don't sit down to eat. They're on their phones. They're trying to manage a lot of things. So they themselves are not in a balanced place. Now, kids are going to pick up on the behaviors and they're going to pick up on the stress of the parents as well. Stress doesn't necessarily mean that they're yelling at each other or anything like that. It can just be, the anxious mom that is trying to do everything right. And that kid will pick that up. So one thing I always say, let's look at, if there's an issue with the kid, let's also look at the environment and the parents and what kind of, what are we teaching them in an unspoken way, and start working on that. Start working on taking care of yourself. And maybe it's some yoga or meditation or sitting still, sitting down to eat without distractions. That's the first thing that we look at, right? The second thing, of course, is looking at the kid and finding ways to support their nervous system, right? Unfortunately, we are in a world which, it's amazing. The technology and the thing, we can zip from point A to point B very quickly. We can get anything. We can order something online very quickly. A lot of things happen quickly, but our nervous systems are not built for this kind of speed. And think, kids, their nervous system and their whole body and mind is developing. So they are very sensitive to what's happening around them, but they're also going to be sensitive to all those sensory inputs. What do we see through our eyes, our ears, our nose, our mouth? What are our 5 senses picking up? And what is our brain processing? And at any point when there's too much of that input, this can then lead the kid to, have tantrums or outbursts or things that might be out of character that sometimes are looked at as the problem. Sometimes it's about how their system can manage it, but it's also, we do have a lot of sensory inputs. Watching screens and things like that, it's a lot of that sensory overload. So that is part of the issue as well that we just need to be aware about.
One thing I have noticed, so for example, there are two kids coming to me and they live in same home, siblings. And they both have very unique personalities. So I'm sure the parents are giving them same kind of atmosphere because, they will have some individual exposure as well in terms of their classrooms and peer groups. But still, for these little kids, more or less, they spend majority of the time with the family. But they have very different personalities. So should we believe that they come with their own blueprint, their own personalities? Because parents are giving them same environment, then why it is that one kid lacks so much focus and other is very attentive?
Exactly. And we'll see the cases even in twins, right?
Yes.
So that's always that example. So in Ayurveda, right, there's a concept of understanding your Prakriti, or we call it your constitution. Your blueprint, yes, it is genetic to some capacity, but it also is developed on, where you were born and so many factors. So we know we're all unique. There's no one other you or me, right? We know we're unique and each kid is unique. But Ayurveda has a system of understanding or making sense out of those patterns and understanding what is the dominant dosha type. Okay, so most of us have heard, if you're into Ayurveda, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. These are the 3 doshas that that determine not just how our body is, but also even the way we think and we behave. Our tendencies also follow these patterns. Right? So you've heard of the 5 elements which exist in nature, right? So Ayurveda understands that the macrocosm is built up of these 5 elements. Right? This is not something that invented. The sages, the wise people kind of just saw that in the universe, right? Then they translated that into texts and ways that we could understand and imbibe that, right, through the ancient texts, and made sense out of that. And how does that manifest in people? How does it manifest in nature, even in animals, right? So when we understand that we're a combination of the doshas, typically we'll have a dominant dosha. You might be more of a Vata, you might be a Pitta, you might be Kapha, or you can be a combination of those doshas. And that's usually something that you're born with. So that is called your Prakriti. Now, when a parent can understand the Prakriti of their kid, they will see that each kid is going to be a different mixture of doshas, different tendencies, not just a personality, even the way they digest food, even the way that they sleep. Those are behaviors as a parent that you can see even before they can speak. So those tendencies are already in the works. So now when Ayurveda understands, okay, this is your Prakriti, we're not saying that, a Vata is good and or Pitta is bad. It's not a judgment. It's just a quality. It can work in your advantage, or it can be the dominant thing that can go out of balance. So typically with kids, if we understand their dosha type, and this is what I do all the time, even with my own kids, it gives me so much more understanding of why they're behaving in certain ways. What are the tipping points for them, right? Some kids, they don't do well being out in the sun and a lot of intense competitive activity, right? They get too kind of intense and wired up, right? Some kids don't do well with doing too many activities in the day and too much stimulation and push. And there's some kids, they need to be pushed. Let's get up, let's go. Like, do we need to push them with their homework? Or do we need to just allow them and give them some, like, it's okay, you didn't win today, like, take it easy. So the approach that you need with your child is going to be different based on what they need to hear. And that's where, if you understand, now you're not just struggling with, okay, do I need to put them in more activities? Do I need to get them up earlier? Do I need to push them? Do I need to let them do things on their own? This gives more clarity on how to navigate raising them.
So for the kids who are hyperactive, they cannot sit still and lack of focus, what do you think is their body type generally?
Kids generally will move more, but you will notice that there are certain kids where they actually cannot sit still, right? Or they cannot focus, or it's disrupting their day-to-day life, right? Typically in these cases, there's usually a Vata imbalance. Vata is the dosha that often regulates movement in the body, regulates the nervous system, and many other things in the body. Okay, Vata is a force that we need, right? It's especially the air and the space. If that is overactive, now a kid is going to feel more sensitive. They're going to be more thrown off by changes. You take them to the mall, they'll feel either overwhelmed, like they'll have breakdowns because their nervous system just too much information, or they will just be not able to sit still. So this is typically, again, in a fast-paced world, more access to faster paced activities, cramming more things into the day, more anxiety. Some kids, right? It's sad we have to talk about anxiety in kids, but there are kids that will be more worrying types. Good family, nothing to worry about, but their nature is a little bit on that Vata side. So when we look at that as being the imbalance, when that's understood, now there's so many ways we can support. And it doesn't just have to be medication. Someone has a problem, you give it medication. You can look at ways to start supporting their nervous system, start to take care of the Vata. And when you see that, that can be really where the kid now, they start to gain confidence in themselves as well. Instead of them feeling like they're a problem, right? It's not their fault that they cannot sit or they cannot focus. They start to gain confidence, and you can start to see that they sleep better, they feel better, they pay attention better. So many things that start to get better when you start taking care of that.
So the kids, who have attention issues, they are more prone to be addicted to screens. That is one thing I have noticed. I might be wrong. So what is something that screens are giving them, and what we can do in order to fulfill that need with other activities?
So I think, I mean, the research is still limited, but it is definitely coming out that screens and a lot of the content online is addictive by nature.
Yeah.
So if you look at, even just being on a screen, there's a lot of stimulation. There's flashing lights all the time, right? There's a lot of radiation. There's a lot of things there. But also the content, typically you'll see, even YouTube ads, things that are moving very quickly, one thing to the next. I mean, a lot of that content, even if it's geared for kids, is often very, very fast.
Even their cartoons are like
Cartoons,
that.
right?
Yeah.
And look, I was talking about this the other day, right? The movies, the kids' movies made in the 80s, you see when you watch those videos versus the ones made now, it's a very different pace.
Yes.
It's very different.
Every 2 seconds, frames are changing, and the music is very addictive.
There's a lot of stimulation,
Yes.
right? So this definitely has an impact on the brain, but kids are developing brains, right? So this is where, when you're getting that constant amount of stimulation, this also leads to the dopamine response. And there's a lot of science behind it, right? Where it's creating this kind of hook where now I need more stimulation for my baseline to be at the same.
Yes.
You know the feeling, you've watched a really intense movie and then normal life feels just dull and bland, right? Because our baseline now has shifted.
Yes.
And for some kids, they are more prone to needing that dopamine, kind of loop to feel that kind of stimulation. So now they look for the next thing and the next thing. It's not their fault. We have to be aware of that. We need to have activities where they can feel engaged and excited and use their brains, where screens have their role, right? And that's really a personal thing to how much and what level. And, it's not to say that it's a bad thing, but it has to be used wisely, and also what that kid needs, right? We see a lot of issues where, especially teenagers, are on their devices way more than they should be. And the parents and teachers don't have much control over that. And these are developing brains. That's where it's concerning, because now, instead of that brain kind of growing and getting, stronger with what we're learning, we're not always using the same part of the brain when we're watching something.
So it is making us duller.
Definitely. I mean, I can feel that. Right?
Yeah.
And if I'm an adult, which did not grow up with much screens,
Yes.
We feel that. So I think the critical part is here with developing brains. We don't have to wait till more research comes out to confirm that it's not great for our developing brains. It needs to be in moderation, and kids need a balance of different activities, right? Kids who are in soccer and sports, they're often, they're much more balanced physically, emotionally, and in many ways as well. So it's up to the families and the parents to also look at, sometimes it's easy to put a kid into a screen. Like it keeps them engaged, right? And I understand parents are also like, I just need some time for myself where they're not going to bother me, right? But we also, and we need to acknowledge that, but we need to also find ways. 20 years ago that we did not have all of those gadgets. Typically we'd have other support. We'd have neighbors, we'd have family members that would engage with the kids to give the parents a break. And where can we bring some of that in as well?
Yeah. So talking about activities, right? You said that kids who are going to activities are more balanced. But how many activities? Because I see some kids, they are just doing activity after activity. Every day they have 2 to 3 extracurricular activities. So I'm curious. I know kids are very intelligent. They can learn faster. But there should be some limit, right? How much they should learn. Or it's okay that we put them to so many activities. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think it's a good conversation to have, right? And again, there's no one right way, right? But I think, when kids are being put in many activities, there is a certain threshold where now, again, it's a different source of stimulation. Yes, it is probably better than having them on the screen at home. But often in these cases now, the parent is a little stressed about them getting to their activity on time. They're eating their food in the car to get to their next activity. Now they finish that activity. Now we got to rush to the next activity. And it's that scheduled, right? Where they call it over scheduling the kid. Whereas back in the day, it was like you would go play soccer with your friends. It was spontaneous. You would go and do some activities in the community. It was more of a spontaneous thing. So there's definitely something to be said about skills that kids can learn, whether it's sports, whether it's music, whether it's extracurricular activities. Definitely those activities are important for kids. But we have to look at to what extent, and it is a common factor nowadays that kids are over scheduled, and this leads to, again, more feelings of feeling rushed, feeling anxious for no reason, and that aggravates Vata in Ayurveda.
So you talked about Vata, but what about Pitta and Kapha kids?
We'll just go over that. Now, Vata is the force, which is essentially the air and the space element. So this manifests in our body typically as movement, as creativity, as spontaneity, right? The Vata people are often very excited about things. Like they're the first ones to have the ideas. They're often, the dancers or the artists or the musicians, or they have a lot of good ideas. Okay. So there's a lot of spontaneity in that, right? Or they love to travel. Let's do this. Now let's go here. There's a lot of lightness. Okay. But now you take that, when that starts to get too much, that can lead to feeling spaced out, to feeling more worried, too many thoughts, even too many ideas. Now I have so many ideas I want to do, hard to manifest, hard to make it happen. There's many people that we can relate to like that. That might physically manifest as cold hands, cold feet, dryness in the body, right? It's also like in kids, you might see they have a little more trouble falling asleep, staying asleep. They're maybe a little more sensitive to emotionally what's happening around or in the environment, right? So they're more on the subtle type, okay? So that's the Vata type. Now, always remember doshas it's not good or bad. These are qualities, okay? So that could be a Vata kid. Now you have your Pitta type. Pitta is essentially a lot of the fire element. It's actually fire and water, okay? But Pitta is the force of communication, even hormones in our body. Transformation, digestion, a lot of that is governed by the force of Pitta. So Pitta might manifest in somebody as, intensity, drive to do things, motivation, a lot of clarity of thought. Pitta kids are often pretty bright, right? They're often quite competitive, right? They're very when you are very determined to get things done and you forget to eat or sleep because you're really involved in what you want to do. There's that kind of go, 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 I want to make it happen, right? Now that you can be very successful. Of course, it becomes a breaking point. If Pitta is too hard, you're pushing yourself towards burnout, go, 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 push, 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 don't eat. Now, anger, frustration, heat, inflammation, all of these things start to come up in the body. As kids, this might manifest more as anger, outbursts, rage, where they want to throw things and they get very angry. Okay, so that's the Pitta type. Whereas Vata kids will more get anxious, fearful. They might feel overwhelmed. They might express in a tantrum, but it's different than in Pitta.
Okay. So Vatas are more prone to anxiousness, and Pitta ones are more angry.
More angry, frustrated, rage, right? So you'll see that at the kid that just wants to throw stuff and they get angry and that impulsive, right, behavior. So when Pitta is out of balance, now that can manifest in adults more as heartburn, as inflammation, skin issues, things like that. But in kids, you'll especially see it. Kids who are very competitive. They want to be number one. These are the kids, their parents are not pushing them.
I'm seeing these kind of kids all the time.
They on their own want to be number one.
Yes.
So as a parent, when the kid is more of a Pitta type, it's not a good combination when the parent is also pushing them to do more activities and reinforcing that. Because these are the kids that now they get into university, they're very hard on themselves. They only study and they burn themselves out and they push, 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 right? So these are the kids that you need to say, it's okay if you're not number one. Let's learn from this, right? Have some time just to calm down, to cool down. Let's take a break. Let's take it easy, right? It's hard for them to do that. And there's a lot of other Ayurvedic things. You can bring in lifestyle things. You can bring in some cooling foods. You can bring in some time in nature or swimming, or, you can even look at the sports and activities based on the dosha types, based on what is good for the kids. Okay, so that's the Pitta type, right? So a lot of drive, a lot of, push, 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 a lot of intensity, right? And if that's channeled, they can be very bright, they can be very successful, but it needs to be balanced. Now you've got the Kapha kids, okay? So Kapha is a quality of earth and water, a lot of stability, okay? So often they will look a little bit more on the chubbier side, okay? But they are the types that are more slow and steady, okay? These are the kids, they like to take their time to get out of bed. They'll do one thing at a time. They look slow from the outside. Doesn't necessarily mean they're slow, but they're focused in what they do and they finish it. One thing at a time, okay? Pittas will push themselves to get things done. Vatas will have 10 different projects and they want to do this and they jump to the next activity, right?
Yeah.
Whereas Kapha is kind of slow and steady. And there's a beauty about that. They love their comfort zone. They don't like to move. They don't like to change their activities. They love what they like to do. So now Kapha kids, they need sometimes some change. They need some stimulation. They need to maybe, bring in a new hobby. They need that little bit of push. So when you see that kid of that nature, if they're not balanced, they can feel heavy. They can feel sluggish. These are the kids that also gain weight, right? There are some kids that are just gaining weight for no obvious reason. They don't like to do exercise. They're happy sitting on the couch. But they're often very kind of affectionate. They're very, they like to maybe take care of people. They could be cuddly as a kid. Like, this is the Kapha type.
Kapha,
Right?
okay.
So these kids do better with a lot of physical activity. They need to move more. They need to do yoga. They need to get outside for physical activity. They need to, have a little bit of stimulation in their environment, some change and motivation. And that keeps them balanced.
It's so amazing when you're talking, different kids were coming,
Coming
their
to
faces
mind,
were
right?
coming. No, but it's very good to know, because the thing with parent and the natural instinct is, as soon as I see, okay, this is the problem with my kid, I try to fix it. But before that, if we can understand them, that where this problem is coming from,
Yes.
maybe we can guide them into the activities that work better for them.
Exactly. And I speak about this a lot when I see patients in practice, right? Sometimes the parents are coming because they say, oh, my kid is a picky eater. I don't know what to feed them. Mom's trying to cook. Sometimes there can be a specific focus. But often we kind of zoom out of that and say, okay, what else is going on, right? And we understand where sometimes, for example, picky eating, it's not just about the food. It's about the control that the kid wants to have in that environment as well.
Okay.
And this is something that parents, sometimes we don't realize that until we step back. This is a way of that kid asserting control over what they want to eat. And if there's a lot of Pitta in that nature, this needs to be taken care of, because we often see situations with picky eaters when the parent steps aside or they step back. Now the kid will eat that food when they're in charge of what they want to eat. For them refusing that is an assertiveness of control as a kid. So that's where behavior also comes into here, right? So Ayurveda has a beautiful way of being able to understand not just your body type, not just the physicality of it, not just the diet, but especially in kids and behaviors. And when you can make sense out of that, sometimes things that seem like a big problem, there's actually an easier solution to start working on that. Like a lot of kids with, let's say, more of a Pitta type and anger and frustration, once we even change a few things in their room, we change a few things in terms of their habits, naturally their mood starts to get better because they're feeling more at ease in their body. They cannot express it or explain it.
So,
right?
For example, what kind of changes in the room for a Pitta type?
Just a thought that comes to, right, is the colors, right? If there's a lot of red and bright kind of aggressive colors, right? If we bring in more cooling colors, right, into the bed sheets and the curtains, or maybe we bring in a water fountain, right, or some pictures of water, that in itself keeps a kind of calming environment in the room, for example, for a child, right? In terms of foods, right? Maybe there are more of those sort of heating, stimulating foods. Let's bring in a little bit more of like cucumbers and avocados, maybe coconut water, maybe mint, right? Those are some of the foods that naturally are a little bit calming, right? If a kid is feeling overheated and angry in the afternoon time, having a snack of some cucumbers naturally will help calm them down. So these are small things, but when you understand where the problem is and you can start to integrate those changes, now that can change a kid's and a parent's life because they're starting to realize much more that surrounds it, and it can be simple steps to take. Right?
Yeah. And I was listening from someone that, if kids do yoga, their all doshas get balanced. Is it true?
So here's the thing, right? When we're talking about dosha balance, it's not that all the doshas have to become same Vata, same Pitta, same Kapha. That's not the point. You want to come back to your balance. So if one kid is more of a Vata Prakriti, he's balanced, healthy Vata. He is going to be flexible. He's going to be active. He's going to be motivated if he's in balance, right? The Kapha balance kid, right, will mean he's not lethargic. He's not just sitting there, like he's moving, right? So when you do yoga, right, you're bringing a natural balance to the body, mind, spirit. And that's your balance. So that's your homeostasis, your equilibrium, which will be different for somebody else.
Yeah. And what do you think is the role of meditation, and at what age we should introduce meditation to kids?
I think, I mean, kids naturally they're pretty balanced. If they have a good environment, they're usually pretty balanced in their early ages. They don't need to be taught. There's a lot of things naturally. Like when I'm seeing kids growing, right, and starting to walk and stand, look at their posture. You know how a kid stands?
Yes.
Perfect posture.
Yes.
Right? Their body's still developed, but they don't have anything hunched over.
Yes.
It's a perfect spine. Like everything is in natural balance.
Yes.
So it's that they start to learn these bad habits, right, as we get older. So, I mean, you may be better to suggest like what age, but typically it's around 6 or 7, where simple yoga meditation practice, they don't need anything complex.
Yes.
It creates a discipline, which I think we don't have as much nowadays. It creates a discipline, and it creates a space to also tune into what's happening, to bring that awareness back to yourself in a world where we're always chasing things outwards. So a huge role to play for kids.
Yeah. Do you do that for your kids? Like, do they have some habits like just to slow down?
They do, yes. And I think, I mean, that's where I feel grateful for whatever I've learned. I love to pass it on to the kids in small ways that can be fun.
Yeah.
They'll watch me when I do my yoga practice. That means sometimes they want to be involved in it in their own ways, right? They either want to, play with me or they do it on the side, right? But at this age, it's not a formal training because they're still small. But we do incorporate small little routines into the day to help. One of those is a little bit of oil massage before bed, right? A little bit of oil massage over the tummy or a little bit over the feet, and they love it. And when they have seen us do it, they want to do it on themselves. The two sisters, they go into the bathroom, they get the oil, they get it all ready, and they're putting it on themselves by themselves. And as a mom, it's so sweet to see that when they're taking that. And I know this may not last forever. When they're in teenage years, maybe these are the things they'll say, I don't want to do it. But I do see that if kids have a good foundation in their earlier years, even in teenage years, if they kind of go off of the routines, they usually come back to it.
Yes.
After. I've seen that in a lot of the families that I've worked with. The parents get a little worried. Now my kid is not doing it. Now they're eating junk food. Now they're out in university. But I usually see in the mid-20s or sometime in their 20s, if they've had a good foundation, good background, and they're still aligned, they come back to those practices. So it's never too late to start.
Yes. No, that's true. Foundation plays a huge role, and it's like we are giving them little seeds, and maybe they won't sprout right away, but one day they will. So, what are some of the habits from the lens of an Ayurvedic doctor that you would suggest?
Well, one thing that just came to mind, right? Even in my own self, after having kids, I was quite regular with my yoga practice, and then of course after having kids, certain routines, it's just very difficult, right? And I remember coming to a certain point of saying, okay, I know I really need this for myself, right? Otherwise I'm going to feel stiff and cranky and all those things. But it was also a reminder that I thought that, right, I need to do this not just for myself, but for my kids to also see that I am doing something. They will learn. Initially, they are still going to, want to poke my eyes open, want to come sit on my lap. They want the attention, right? But this was also a reminder for myself, so that when I do something, they're learning that through that process. And now they understand. Still, sometimes, they might want to be involved or they want to come to do something, but they know if I'm doing my yoga, that this is something that, we're doing, and they have curiosity, right? Kids have curiosity. So that's one thing that I think as parents, right? Some sort of small self-care thing, right? That you can do for yourself that you feel better with, whatever that is, right? And the other thing that I think is really huge is our eating habits, right? Modern day, there's a lot of outside food. There's a lot of eating on the go. There's a lot of eating cold foods. There's a lot of eating foods that are not aligned to our season and our body type. So a lot of kids are ending up following those patterns because that's what the parents are doing, right? And there's just no time to sit, moms are tired to make a whole, 3 meals a day, right? Yes. So I think a lot of those are getting the kids even involved in a little bit of meal prep or cooking, or getting involved in that if they have the interest, and seeing if the parents are putting a little bit of time and energy into preparing food, kids will have that interest. And the other things, when you sit down, at least one meal a day with as a family meal. Not everybody doing their own thing and on phones, like having that where we sit together and we eat together, just like how it was done many generations ago. That's the community time around food. So those are some simple practices just.
So you said food, like eating one meal together.
And like as a family. As a family, right?
Yes,
small family, big family, whatever it is.
And then trying to cook your meals at home.
Getting kids a little bit involved in that process.
Yeah.
whatever you can do to your capacity, right? Where you can bring in some of that healthy eating. It saves money versus eating out, but when you're putting energy into preparing food, it pays off, not just in terms of quality, but you're putting that love and care for the family into that.
One time I was having a conversation with the kid, and I just asked them, do you know where the food comes from? They said it comes from store. I mean, I wanted to talk about soil and all those things, Mother Earth, but they literally did not know that food comes from soil. So I think that is another thing that, once in a while we should expose them to maybe just a small hobby garden in your home, or just 2 or 3 pots where you're cooking something small as a green onion, so that they can really connect and have more gratitude toward food.
Definitely. And I think, kids living in a lot of urban areas, I mean, they're not exposed to farms, and they just see the grocery store, right? That's what they're exposed. They'll pick that up, right? So
but it was very shocking for me.
I can, we can see that, right? Because I think we grew up, at least we knew, we saw things, right? But there's a lot of kids, think a lot of the big cities in the world where there's no agriculture, there's no land, right? Very urban. So I think there are so many ways, and this is what I love to do as well. A little bit of gardening in whatever capacity, whether it's in small pots, whether you have some little bit of plot of land in your backyard or a community garden, connecting, and this is what I do for the kids since they were small, even when I was pregnant, and even one of them was little, a little cherry tomato in the backyard and a few herbs, and we'd look at it, we'd see it grow, and of course, when they're small, they want to pluck it, and a lot of things get damaged out of curiosity, right?
Yes.
But that wasn't the point. It was to explore that. And then last year, we planted a whole bunch of peas. And one of my little ones, she would just go in there and pluck the peas, and they could manage a lot of those things by themselves, right? So it helps them understand, right? And something about connecting with earth, right? Earth element. In a modern day where there's so much Vata, so much up here, right? So much imbalance, connecting with the earth is one of the simplest ways of getting us grounded again. A lot of health issues, right? They say that if you sleep on the floor, you sit on the floor, you connect with that earth element,
or you walk barefoot.
Right? So I think, and Sadhguru says 1 hour barefoot on the ground, right? And I've just started to try to bring that in with the weather getting better.
Just
going out in the garden for a few minutes barefoot, even if the soil is cold, just connecting with that. If kids can do that and play with the earth, right? We think as parents, oh, they're going to get dirty, and I have to so much mess and all that, right? There are logistics. But I remind myself too, let the kids just go play, get dirty, let them feel the earth, explore with that. So good for them. There are studies showing that the microbes in the earth actually help with depression, right? We think just touching the ground, what's that going to do? But there's actually studies that those microbes actually affect our brain. So kids being able to play, being able to expose to the nature element, it brings them back to themselves.
So any advice, Dr. Leena, you want to give to all the parents who are listening to you right now or watching you?
So I think one important thing is not feeling overwhelmed, there's more things to do. We're already, as parents, feeling overwhelmed.
Yes.
And many parents are really trying to do their best. So we have to acknowledge that often we're doing a lot. But I think a couple of takeaway points here are look at what you're doing for yourself. Sometimes trying to do all the outward things is not helping you feel more at ease. Make that little bit of time for yourself. Look at the priorities of, self-care and doing certain things that also benefit the kids. And B, when you understand a kid's dosha, this gives you such a framework with how you can choose their academics, their sports, their extracurricular activities, and how you manage their behavior as well. So when you understand the dosha type, it makes it so much easier to know how to navigate raising them. So that would be the second thing. And C, just bringing back nature element, right?
Yes.
Even if you don't know what dosha type or whatever, bringing back to nature whatever you can, a little bit of pots in the home, a little bit of, soil or walking on the ground. This will all really help with bringing kids' nervous systems more to a balanced state.
Yeah, those were some really good and very practical insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed speaking with you.
And
if any questions, you can put them in the chat.
Thank you so much.